Maybe you've been there. You're standing in the middle of a Target aisle holding a greeting card and suddenly your eyes are welling up. Or you're scrolling through your phone and a 30-second TikTok about a rescued golden retriever has you actively sobbing into your pillow. Sometimes it doesn't even take something sad. You might drop your keys when you're already running late, or someone might ask you, "Are you okay?" in that specific gentle tone of voice, and the floodgates just open. If you are someone who cries easily, you already know the social script. You apologize. You furiously wipe your eyes. You say, "I don't know why I'm crying," or "I'm just being too sensitive." In a culture that often equates stoicism with strength, being a quick crier can feel like a liability. It can feel like your emotional skin is just a little too thin, leaving you exposed to the elements while everyone else seems to be wearing a heavy winter coat. But what if the way we think about crying is completely backward? Welcome to Inner Cortex. Today we're looking at the psychology of people who cry easily. We are going to explore why your tear ducts seem to have a hair trigger, what it actually says about your brain's architecture, and why this tendency, far from being a weakness, is actually a highly evolved mechanism for survival, connection, and emotional processing. To understand why you cry easily, we first need to look at the biology of a tear. Not all tears are created equal. Basal tears keep our eyes lubricated. Reflex tears wash away irritants like onion vapors or dust. But emotional tears, the ones that happen when we feel overwhelmed, moved, or heartbroken, are entirely different. Research shows that emotional tears contain higher levels of stress hormones, like ACTH, as well as prolactin, a hormone associated with bonding and maternal care. They also contain leucine and enkephalin, an endogenous opioid that acts as a natural painkiller. When you cry, your body is literally attempting to excrete stress chemicals and administer a mild natural anesthetic to your nervous system. But why do some people hit this threshold so much faster than others? The first piece of the puzzle often comes down to your autonomic nervous system, and a concept called emotional reactivity. Your nervous system is constantly scanning the environment, taking in data, and adjusting your physiological state. For people who cry easily, the dial is turned up. The pathway between perceiving an emotional stimulus, like a touching commercial or a frustrating email, and the body's physiological response is shorter and faster. This isn't a defect, it's a difference in tuning. You might have a highly reactive sympathetic nervous system, which revs up quickly in response to stress or excitement. Crying is your body's way of hitting the brakes. It triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, forcing your heart rate to slow down and your breathing to stabilize. When you cry easily over minor frustrations, your brain isn't overreacting. It's actually deploying an immediate, highly effective strategy to self-soothe before your system gets completely overwhelmed. Another massive factor is your level of empathy, specifically what psychologists call empathetic resonance. When you see someone else in pain, or even when you witness a beautiful moment of human connection, mirror neurons in your brain fire as if you are experiencing that event yourself. For highly sensitive individuals, this resonance is profound. You aren't just observing the world, you are absorbing it. If you find yourself crying at a stranger's wedding proposal in a park, or tearing up while listening to a podcast about someone overcoming adversity, it's because your brain is exceptionally good at simulating the emotional states of others. This is the foundation of deep social connection. The same sensitivity that makes you cry at a life insurance commercial is what makes you an incredibly attuned partner, a deeply empathetic friend, and someone who can read the emotional temperature of a room the moment you walk into it. But the psychology of crying isn't just about biology. It's heavily shaped by your personal history and attachment style. Let's talk about attachment. How you bonded with your primary caregivers early in life sets the template for how you handle emotions as an adult. Interestingly, crying behavior varies wildly depending on these styles. If you have a secure attachment style, you likely view crying as a normal, healthy release. You don't judge yourself harshly for it, and you trust that expressing vulnerability won't cause the people you care about to abandon you. However, if you have an insecure or preoccupied attachment style, your relationship with crying might be more complicated. People with anxious attachment often have a hypervigilant emotional radar. You might cry easily because your system is constantly braced for rejection or conflict. In this context, crying isn't just a physiological release, it's an unconscious social signal. It's an evolutionary distress flare that says, I am overwhelmed, please don't leave me, please offer support. Conversely, if you grew up in an environment where emotions were punished or ignored, you might have developed a dismissive, avoidant attachment style. You might actually fight the urge to cry with everything you have, intellectualizing your feelings to keep them at a safe distance. But sometimes when the dam finally breaks, the tears come flooding out over something seemingly insignificant like dropping a coffee cup. It's not about the coffee, it's about months or years of unexpressed grief finally finding an exit strategy. We also cannot ignore the cultural and social context of crying. In the United States, we live in a culture that highly prizes productivity, composure, and relentless positivity. The American ideal is often the stoic individual who powers through adversity without breaking a sweat. When you cry easily in a culture that demands emotional control, it feels shameful. Yet, cross-cultural studies reveal a fascinating paradox. In wealthier, more individualistic countries with greater freedom of expression like the US or Sweden, people actually report crying more frequently than people in countries with more restrictive social norms. The freedom to express emotion allows the tears to flow, but the cultural expectation of stoicism simultaneously makes us feel guilty for doing it. It's a psychological double bind. So how do we reframe the experience of being a quick crier? First, we have to stop apologizing for our physiology. The next time you feel the tears welling up in a meeting because you're frustrated or in your car because you heard a poignant song, try to pause the narrative of shame. Instead of thinking, what is wrong with me? Try thinking, my nervous system is processing right now. Notice the quality of your tears. Clinical psychologists emphasize that the value of crying isn't in how often you do it, but in how it functions for you. Do your tears bring relief? Do they help you transition out of a state of high anxiety into a state of calm? If so, they are doing exactly what evolutionary biology designed them to do. However, if you are crying constantly and it feels more like a symptom of a deep, persistent depression or burnout, that is a different story. If the tears offer no relief and leave you feeling more exhausted and hopeless, that is a signal to seek professional support. But for the vast majority of people who simply cry easily, the tears are not a pathology. They are a feature, not a bug. If you are a frequent crier, you are also likely someone who experiences joy intensely. The emotional spectrum isn't a selective dial. You can't numb the sorrow without also numbing the happiness. The tears you shed are the tax you pay for living a life in full color. They are the physical manifestation of a heart that is willing to stay open in a world that gives us every reason to close off. You are the one who feels the weight of the world, yes, but you are also the one who feels its profound beauty. You are the one who can be moved to tears by a sunset, by a kind gesture from a stranger, by a memory of someone you loved. In a society that is becoming increasingly disconnected, digitized, and numb, your tears are an act of rebellion. They are a reminder of our shared humanity. They are proof that you are paying attention, that you care, and that you are alive. So let the tears fall. Let them wash the cortisol from your system. Let them signal to the people around you that you have reached your capacity. Let them be what they are, the beautiful, messy, undeniable evidence of a deeply feeling human being. Thank you for exploring the inner workings of the mind with us. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to Inner Cortex. Remember, your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your most profound strength. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your mind.